Hey everybody, Bonehead for the Bonehead podcast, and we got the May FAQ. Now, I've not been feeling 100% the last kind of week, so it's been a bit quiet on the channel. And yesterday, this kind of dropped in past the point where I was done with the day. So we got an FAQ. Now, we didn't get the FAQ in November, which led to a load of people speculating, including me, that the reason they haven't done an FAQ is because why would they bother if they're about to well, I think it was, what was it Adepticon or Depticon? I was like, makes sense that they haven't done an FAQ if they're just going to release a new edition in March. Well guys, it's now basically June and we haven't had a new edition, we haven't even had a team, but we do have an FAQ. So let's dive in and see what's changed in the world of Blood Bowl. So if you go to the Warhammer community, Blood Bowl FAQ update, play ball with new clarifications. It's May, and that means it's time for an FAQ update for Blood Bowl. What about November, eh? What about November? The Herald of Nuffle Blood Bowl rules writer Tom was kind enough to explain the balance updates implemented this time around. Then you've got the match play art there. Tom, we've been keeping a close eye on the state of Blood Bowl and monitoring the FAQ inbox. Overall, we're happy with where the game is at present, so we focused on addressing the most commonly received questions, a few of which are examined in detail below. Now, there was some chat in the Discord yesterday. I had a look in the middle of the night, and overall we're happy with where the game is at present. Now, that's got a lot of you saying, I think we need to buckle up now for a one-team takeover for Blood Bowl forever. And I'm here to say that if that's the case, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Like, Blood Bowl is in a great place at the moment, where most teams are competitive to the point where you can run them, specifically in League, and you'll face your own individual challenges and stuff like that. So I actually think Blood Bowl's in a very, very, very good place. Obviously, we want more, because more Blood Bowl is more better. Right, Ironhide skin. So the arrival of Chaos Dwarves has been met with enthusiasm, but also a bit of confusion as to when and against what Ironhide skin takes effect. We've clarified this skill still works where the player is prone, stunned, or has lost their tackle zone, as well as noting that foul assists cannot modify the armor roll too. So this has come up on the channel. We played some match play stuff when the Chorfs came out. I think the question came up then, but definitely if you've been watching the Bonehead Championship, that has come up. And the timing of skills, this I love, because again, if you've been watching the Bonehead Championship, this has come up too. I wonder if they're just watching the Bonehead Championship and be like, yeah, okay, we need to fix that. One of the more frequent topics sent to the inbox concern the timing of skills in relation to one another. We view this FAQ to clarify the most common cases of confusion, such as how and when the tentacles and diving tackle skills affect the dodge roll. The sequence of events for hit and run has been looked at as well. Replacing block action, this is all about vampires really, isn't it? There are various skills that allow players to replace a block action with a special action. Actually, you've got Hypno Gaze, which replaces a block. No, doesn't. That's a special action. And then you've got Iron Flame, which is another kind of thing. The update clarifies it. There are a few more questions, including how Trickster and a Mercenary Giant interact. So someone out there is playing Blood Bowl properly, which is crazy nonsense Blood Bowl. So I applaud you massively. Right, let's have a look at the now 19-page FAQ document, which is pretty juicy. And it's a really tough one because you've got 19 pages and most of it makes a lot of sense. So you don't need to read it all. It's a reference document more than anything. Can special actions that replace the block action be performed as part of a blitz action be used during... I've read that all wrong. Basically, stuff that replaces a block action, can you do it as a blitz in the blitz kickup event? Yes, so you can stab blitz, for example, in the blitz event. And the same with the chainsaw, I guess, is probably two of the biggest adjustments to that. I'm probably missing something. I do apologize, guys. I'm not 100% at the moment. Not even with the phlegm. That's due to trees. Okay, what happens if a player suffers a characteristic reduction as a result of an injury, but the characteristic that would be reduced is already at its minimum value? For example, strength 1 player that suffers a dislocated shoulder, -1 strength, or a player with a passing ability of 6 suffers a broken arm. If a player that suffers a characteristic reduction is already at their minimum value, it cannot be reduced further. Instead, roll again on the injury table until a different result comes up. I mean, in previous editions, I think if you lost strength and went to 0 strength, you died. I might be remembering that wrong. That might be like a Necromunda or a wartime hangover in my mind, but Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. That's fine. I don't really. Actually, I do like this for those players that have got like passing stat can tend to be a bit of a fudge through. So like if a player with passing 6, I'm trying to think of a player with passing 6 gets injured and their passing gets worse. I mean, there's not really much difference between passing 6 and passing nothing, is there really? Except you can pass. I think everybody should be able to pass, but that's a different matter and not for the FAQ. What is the timing of diving, tackle and dodge? For example, if the dodging player passes the agility test, then my player uses a diving tackle to make them fail. Can they re-roll the test with dodge? Does the negative apply to the new test? Yes. Now this has been the same case for a long time, I believe. So to dodge, a player moves into the intended square, then makes the agility test. That's okay. If the test is passed without using the dodge reroll and a marking player uses diving tackle, then a dodge reroll can be used to reroll the now failed test. The dodging player must still subtract 2 from the result of the rerolled agility test. So the way diving tackle works is if your opponent leaves the square, you can place yourself prone and they get -2 to their edge test. How it works in reality is your opponent rolls, and then if they pass, but a -2 would fail them, you diving tackle, and they then stack it. But if they've got dodge, they can still use that reroll. If they've got a team reroll, they can still use that reroll, but it's now -2 to that test, as it was before, but it's retroactively applied. Oh, juicy rule. Really, really good skill, diving tackle. Very, very, very useful. As I choose the square my player with sidestep moves into when pushed, does this count as a voluntary move or an involuntary move for skills such as tentacles? This has come up as well. As I think this also affects trickster. Involuntary. So if you get blocked away from a tentacles person, whether you're getting blocked away or sidestepping away and choosing, it is involuntary. I can't remember what happens with with Bamf and tentacles. Let's see if we can find that one, because that's an interesting one as well. I don't know. We'll come back to that. But that makes sense. So tentacles doesn't trigger on sidestep. Makes sense. When a player dodges while being marked by a player with tentacles, do they move into the new square, resolve any effects such as picking up a ball, then resolve the tentacles roll? No. So this, I think, is a bit of a change, but it's nice to see clarified, and I don't really care. So the tentacle skill is resolved first as the player tries to move. The tentacles roll is a result of 6 or higher, or natural 6, and the player hasn't moved into the square and cannot try to pick up the ball. So tentacles will now trigger before everything else, which makes a huge amount of sense. No, that's not right. The tentacle skill is resolved first as the player tries to move if the tentacle rolls a 6 or hasn't moved into the square. So, okay, what it is saying is tentacles is resolved before picking up the ball, because they've not really got into the ball. So it's still dodge, tentacles. If tentacles fails, then pick up the ball. Okay. Damn, I thought we had a bit of a change to tentacles that made it a bit more clear. But I don't know, guys. If I'm reading that wrong, let me know. But my first reaction when I read this last night was, oh, tentacles is now made like nice and simple. Oh dear, dishwasher's broken. When an opposition player dies and the plague-ridden trait is used, it says the lineman doesn't die and instead a new rotter lineman is added to your roster. Is the opposition player still removed from the opponent's roster? Yes, they die, but you get a new dude. If a vampire player declares a blitz action, fails their bloodlust and changes their action to a move action, can they then use hypnogaze instead? No, you got to choose hypnogaze as a special action, which makes sense as well. So hypnogaze is a different type of move action, basically. So it's a non-combat, which means you don't get bloodlust boost. When using Helmut Wulf's Old Pro special rule, do you still need to roll for the Pro skill? Yes. Old Pro offers an alternative way to use the Pro skill, so you must still roll a d6 as described in the skill. If the Pro skill roll fails, you may then attempt to use Old Pro again in a later turn. The once per game use comes into effect only when you actually re-roll a dice as part of an armor roll. Okay, fine. All right, here we go. This is a fun one. If a giant mercenary player inducement blocks a player with the trickster trait and the trait is used to place the player in one of the 4 squares behind the giant, does the block skill still happen? Does the block still happen and the target player is no longer marked with the giant? Yes, but you resolve the block, and if the giant follows up, it must change it facing. So basically, whether you are going to end up in a target square for the giant to be able to hit you or behind him, it happens. You can't escape the block. But if you follow up with a giant, you've got to face the way you follow up. Yep, totally makes sense. Actually really like that. That's really, really good. Really clear. Okay, we've got hit and run here. So when using the hit and run trait, at what point does the player move their 1 free square? So the movement granted by the hit and run trait is taken after fully resolving the block action. The target of the block is pushed, follow-up happens, armor rolls are resolved, and if relevant, if determined where the ball lands, then the player with hit and run may move a free square. If the block action was part of a blitz action, the hit and run movement is taken before any additional squares are moved as part of the blitz, which is, I believe, how we've played it, but it's nice to make sure that that's all squared up. So basically you block, you roll all the stuff, and then normally as the sequence would end, you get a free square. That means you can move 1 square, and not, as long as you're not marking anybody, which is totally cool. Spike magazine issue 18, Chaos Dwarfs. When fouling a player with Ironhard skin, do you get modifiers to the roll for foul assists? No, the armor roll cannot be modified, and this includes any modifiers given by foul assists. Again, that makes sense. That's how we've played it in the championship as well, and I think that's how most people have been playing it. So as we scroll down, let's see if there's anything else. Ironhard skin, that's from the rule book, right? This is basically just fixing the rule book to say what it says in the Chorf book. I'm going to read it just in case there's a typo and somebody here gets angry. Opposing players cannot modify any armor rolls made against this player. In addition, the claw skill cannot be used when making an armor roll. The skill may still be used as if the player is prone, stunned, or has lost their tackle zone. Fine, it's that clarification there that just basically triggers, it forces us to acknowledge that it still works on a foul. Breathe fire, change the 3rd sentence to read on a 1 or lower. Here we go. The player gets over eager, engulfing themselves in flame, and is immediately knocked down. Okay, so that's basically saying you get -1 to the roll if you're shooting somebody strength 5 or more. It brings in the wildly inaccurate question, right? Of like, okay, so 1 is this. What is a 0? Like, well, you can't have 0, but it's the same as a 1. Ironhard skin, the skill may still be used if a player is on the ground. And that's it. All right, so kind of a couple of things missing from this document. One is mega star adjustments. Now, they've said right at the beginning, that they're happy with the way Blood Bowl is playing at the moment. And, you know, every game is imperfect. I think it's a nice place of imperfect at the moment. It's Blood Bowl. It's good fun. Any team can beat any other team. And every team presents its own kind of beautiful subset of challenges. Now, Megastars, there's some noise that Deeproot should be off the list and that Skitter should be on the list. We've got Bomber, Cindy, Deeproot, Griff, Hackflem, Creek, and Morg. I mean, yeah, I don't mind. The good thing about the way Blood Bowl works is if in your tournament you don't want certain stars, I believe the NAF still acknowledge you if you change that up. So if you want a megastar, if you want somebody to be a different megastar, you just kind of write it in your rulebook and it's good to go, which I hugely appreciate. And it's actually very much fluffy for Blood Bowl. I'm a huge fan of standardized format and data because that's how my mind works, but from a fluff point of view, Blood Bowl is super feudal. And it is in real life as well. You've got this league over here, and this tournament here does it this way, and that's part of the fluff of Blood Bowl. In Blood Bowl, like Lord, the NAF was just fell apart, and then everyone started doing things their own sort of way. That's how Dungeon Bowl happened, sort of, and stuff like that. So it makes a lot of sense that there's a lot of differences in Blood Bowl. The other thing is no tier changes for teams. I think the only kind of thing we're looking for is Orcs potentially to go back up to tier 1. Otherwise, without introducing, they've not updated Chaos Dwarfs. From Teams of Legend. Haha, I do that in my stuff as well. I forget the asterisks. Yeah, Chaos Dwarfs going down to tier 2 might be a thing, but I think it's still too early for them. I don't think they would change that within sort of 6 months of the team being released. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Without going to a tier 3 system where you can blend stunty teams, like, and it depends what you're doing. Like Black Orcs, the Chaos Chosen, they're wicked teams in tournaments. So they're not in league, so it's not. Games Workshop, I think, play this very much. Blood Bowl is a tournament RPG game, so their world doesn't necessarily reflect tournament meta, because tournament is, I don't think their view of how Blood Bowl is played primarily. And they're probably right. I think tournaments are great, but I think there's probably still more leagues playing than tournaments. And I do think that actually, as much as I love tournament match play, I mean, if you're ignoring sevens, then I think a Blood Bowl 11s league is the best way to play. And I think when we've done some surveys and stuff with you guys, you've agreed with me on that one. Okay, right. So yes, no tier changes, no megastar changes, no player costs changes, just a pretty decent tidy up FAQ. Nothing too volatile. Yeah, not a huge amount to go on there, except that maybe we're actually just in a holding place for Blood Bowl now. That they are going to do, like you guys have said, 1 team a year and keep Blood Bowl pretty static. In which case, we can start playing with Secret League, we can start binging other forms of Blood Bowl, or just playing in a couple of other games as well. I love it. Anyway, let me know what you think or what I've missed, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking.